Well, we're asked to believe by the vast majority of people who have ever called themselves Christians, who have lived on this earth, and certainly by the texts, many of them left behind, that the disciples were not expecting this, were confused and astounded by it. And that in fact it was a literal, physical resurrection of the body of Jesus. In other words, he was laid down in a tomb, wrapped in the usual funeral garments, and at some point got up, took the wrappings off, presumably, and walked out, pushed the stone open, and therefore was no longer there. We don't quite know where he goes, though. One would imagine he would go somewhere. He doesn't seem to have the same sort of physical needs as a resurrected being as others. It's clear that, for example, the women in the group recognize the reality of what's happened sooner than the men do. It's also true that if we look at the traditions and texts that we have, that Jesus' appearances after his death were kind of confusing and contradictory. I mean, the road to Emmaus shows two disciples who knew Jesus really well, having no idea, walking a long way with him, chatting as a stranger, until they have dinner and he breaks bread and suddenly they realize, oh, that's Jesus. Now that's a totally different idea, isn't it? It's that Jesus is alive, but existing in places that you don't fully expect, that in some ways his spirit has entered everything and can be revealed at any moment. And that is certainly the way I understand the living resurrection. I do not, well, obviously the ascension gets rid of the problem of Christ's body hanging around on earth, but I think everybody can also understand that the ascension had to happen logically. You can see how it worked backwards from the fact that, oh dear, we have a resurrected bodily Jesus and we don't have a coffin or a gravesite or anywhere, so he has to go upward. And I think that also helps explain the mystery that these stories are trying to convey to us. And the message is always more important than the facticity of this, it seems to me. And that is that if you are as close to God the Father as Jesus was, closer than any human being at any time that we know of in history, then even a grotesquely painful and awful death is one that you can come to terms with, that does not fill you with fear, because you're able, even at the moment they're driving nails into your hands, to say, forgive them, Father, they don't understand what they're doing. That level of composure and oneness with God at that moment suggests to me that Jesus' spirit and Jesus' life, and even in some forms Jesus' body, endured past his death. And we have no greater proof of that than someone like me is sitting here over 2 millennia later talking about this figure, whom I also believe to have been in touch with me personally at several points in my life. That is a mystery. I prefer to accept the miracle of Jesus' bodily resurrection as a mysterious fact, but I am more inclined to emphasize what it conveys metaphorically and what it conveys transcendentally about the nature of our existence, and how, in fact, we can be free of death, which means being free of the fear of death at every moment of our lives, which is how Jesus lived.